Hello, my paper explored the range of reverse Lend-Lease activities, including the countries and types of programs, and considered the lasting effects that these activities have had on the U.S. military. As Lorenzo Fioramonti wrote in our reading, Gross Domestic Problem, How the Politics of GDP Shape Society and the World, the GDP was relatively a new concept at the beginning of World War II. The availability of regular and detailed statistics on the strengths and weaknesses of the economy helped the American government outpace its enemies in terms of munitions production. By using the accounts to monitor the economy's productive capacity, the government optimized the conversion of the civilian economy to a wartime manufacturing machine without hampering internal consumption. So with that background, I use that framework in part to look at the impact of reverse Lend-Lease. In 2019, the Center for Economic Policy Research and the Federal Reserve Bank released reports about World War II expenditures. Between 1941 and 1945, the U.S. spent $296 billion on wartime expenditures related to World War II, which was the equivalent of approximately $5 trillion in 2023 money. This represented 35.8% of the country's GDP, a dramatic increase from the 1.4% of the GDP that was spent on defense in 1940. In 1943 and 1944, the defense level was even at a higher average at 40%. But not all of the $296 billion was used by the 16 million Americans who served in uniform. About $50 billion of that, or 17%, was sent to the Allies and partners through the Lend-Lease program. As part of the program, nations receiving aid could repay the United States through reverse Lend-Lease, also called reciprocal aid. And this could include providing U.S. military personnel access to bases overseas, or housing them, or feeding them, or giving them uniforms and clothing items for our forward-based troops. About $8 billion, or 16% of what we gave out in Lend-Lease, was repaid to us using reverse Lend-Lease. Many people are familiar with World War II, but not as many people are familiar with reverse Lend-Lease. Even during World War II, not many Americans were familiar with this program. In 1943, the Office of War Information surveyed the U.S. populace and found out that only 20% had any idea about the reverse Lend-Lease program. I literally found hundreds of significant primary and secondary sources, which became overwhelming and definitely a change from where I was in our first week of class when I was struggling to find, or I thought I was struggling to find, reverse Lend-Lease items. I found mostly Lend-Lease items, but after I sort of broke the code on where to find documents, I was flooded with things that I could use for this paper. Most of what I found from primary sources were federal government document holdings. I had two general types that were the most significant. The first were official documents from the State Department in the Office of Historian related to the Roosevelt administration. These included copies of individual country negotiations for the Lend-Lease and the reverse Lend-Lease aid. The second most significant type of primary sources were the quarterly reports from the White House signed by President Roosevelt that were required to go to Congress every quarter. They were mandated in the original 1941 Reverse Lend-Lease Act. And these reports often included reverse Lend-Lease support that was received. The U.S. military benefited from reverse Lend-Lease in many ways that went beyond the $8 billion we received back, including building multinational partnerships and access to bases, and many of which remain today. The reverse Lend-Lease law, or the Lend-Lease law, is still in effect. We use it to support our allies like Ukraine. So reverse Lend-Lease is still an available program that could help offset U.S. financial requirements so we can receive support from an ally.